Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. This is the fourth part in what will probably be about a 5 or 6 part series covering kind of layered portrait painting, working with the limited palette. So every stage we've just been using ivory black, cadmium red, yellow ochre and white, and slowly building the painting up. So the first week we spent developing the drawing, blocking in shadows. Second week we added variations into the shadows. Third week, which was last week, we blocked in or dead coloured the rest of the piece. So this week we're going to be going in and kind of refining smaller forms or kind of medium forms, things like the cheeks, the nose, parts of the eye, lips, just to start refining into it, and then we'll have another 1 or 2 sessions after that where we'll be glazing a bit and adding even further details. So this week we probably won't focus on the hair at all, we'll just be working in the face, just looking at how we can start to kind of get all of that properly blocked in and working well. So we're using, as I say, the same palette, still using mineral spirits and oil. I'm going to be using a couple of brushes that I'll probably just clean periodically. The first being this kind of flat that's about 1 centimetre wide or something like that, and then this, which is a kind of tiny brush for detail work. So yeah, we'll get started. You'll be able to mostly just follow what I'm doing, but we're going to ideally be kind of trying to add a bit of more chroma, so slightly more intensity to colour into the lights, and then trying to just get a nice amount of turning, possibly bring a little bit more colour into some of these halftones as well, as they've ended up a bit grey. It's quite typical for the dead colouring stage to end up looking a little bit lifeless, which is partly why it's called dead colouring actually. So if we do some kind of warm glazes over the top and start to bring back a bit of colour, but still using that foundation, that form that we kind of initially developed so last week. So as I say, I'm just going through and boosting the chroma a bit. Across these lighter sections. At the same time, just looking for kind of more minor, kind of smaller fluctuations in tone and colour. Some overlaps here. actually going to quickly pop a light on because I've got a feeling that this daylight is disappearing a bit. But that should see us through if the light starts to change a bit. So you can see this kind of increasing the chroma, so it's mostly just working with pure just the yellow ochre mixed with cadmium red and a little bit of white if we're trying to boost the value of it, but you can see it's starting to add a bit more kind of slightly more nice kind of glow to the lighter sections of the face. So it's generally the case that as things get lighter they also get higher chroma, so we don't want to just mix white into our mid-tone values. We actually want to make them higher chroma as they get lighter. So because everything's established underneath, I can start to use some more subtle blendings as I'm working over the top here. So you don't have to be as blocky as we were last week, where we were just kind of trying to put everything in a very solid, flat way. Start to look for more subtle shifts here and there, which is what this stage is going to be about. So I'm just going to be progressively working around the piece and doing this. Can also start going in and working on these things like just underneath the eyes. Start to give sections like that some slightly more specific form. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about rendering smaller forms. So medium forms might be something like the cheek, and then smaller forms are things like just underneath this eye here. So just like last week, I'm kind of working my way from the top left down. a bit on these eyes. So you can see that this stage is easier than it would otherwise be, just because we've done a lot of work in the last couple of weeks setting the stage for these, painting in these forms. So as you get more comfortable, you can start to skip stages more. You can see the benefit of kind of working through things part by part, piece by piece. Gives you a little bit more control. And you'll be really satisfied with the results. As I say, I'm not actually going to work a lot in the beard, but there's this section here where there's a bit of a shift from the colours just underneath the nose, the flesh just underneath the nose. A little bit where it kind of transitions into the beard there. So in a way, this portion of the approach is it's almost like glazing. So I'm doing a tiny bit of glazing, where I'm working thinly with warmer, higher chroma colours over the top of my dead colouring, and that's to establish the right colours in the painting. So we developed form in the first stage, but we didn't quite clearly establish what colours we wanted, what chroma shifts and that sort of thing. So in this stage you can see it's becoming more apparent, or we're getting a bit more specific with the colours that we want. So if there's somewhere where it remains a bit grayer, you can leave it, or you can just do a kind of lighter glaze over the top. But a lot of it you can see is benefiting from me kind of boosting the chroma, but I'm not actually changing any shapes. So the shapes of these eyes, or the shapes under the eyes, are all remaining quite consistent. And maybe adding a little bit of detail here and there, but for the most part that aspect is staying consistent. Swap back to a bigger brush now, just because I'm working in these sections here which aren't quite so, detail's not quite so crucial. Going to shift some of those colours down into the neck. I'm not going to worry too much about the neck actually, because I want the focus to be in the centre of the face. So the portrait aspects of the face are my focal point. That's not too bad. That top section of the face. So again, we're not adding detail, we're just refining our colours and the forms to a certain extent. Just adding some slightly more subtle transitions out of these shadows. That's probably something we'll get into a bit more depth next week when we start to properly refine the smaller forms. Just going to go through, there's a bit of more broken colour than we've kind of allowed for coming out of these eyebrows. Which is something else that we'll definitely be returning to. But they look a bit too harsh at the moment, so I just want to kind of soften them out slightly. So I'm just kind of dragging my smaller brush over these sections of wet paint above, which has given me an alright texture for the eyebrows, so slightly different texture from the rest of the skin obviously there. Kind of thinner, a bit more scrubby. Yeah, it's not too bad, that. Quite happy with how the nose looks. I could possibly do a little bit more on the nose at this stage, but given it's working quite nicely, I don't want to overdo things. That's something we can revisit a bit more specifically later. So I might add a slight highlight to it in a moment, but for now, I'm just going to drop down and work on these lips a bit. They already looked a little bit low chroma before adding all that, or kind of increasing the chroma above, but they look extremely low chroma now, basically. Again, it's just a case of glazing over with, in this instance, mostly just a little bit of CAD red, dulled down a bit because it does get quite bright, CAD red. And then, as we drop down, these portions here are going to be more yellowy. So as it gets down into the skin, we want to go back to our kind of regular flesh tone colour. Which, granted, kind of flicks quite quickly into the beard texturally. So I'm nearly there with this stage. You can see everything's come together nicely. I'm going to be doing a lot more work refining things further next week, but this stage where we just want to kind of mess around with our chroma a bit, get everything looking much closer to the final result, so we'll be able to kind of knuckle down and really finish off refining stuff using this as a foundation, which will be good. A tiny bit of scrubbing over just with my finger into the hair just to soften that. We're going to be working on those edges soon anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But you'll notice that what I've done with the neck, it's not too bad. I haven't added too much chroma there because I want the focus to be in the face. One last thing I'm going to do is give my smaller brush a nice clean. Pick up some pure white, kind of go through and just make a note of highlight on the nose, just on this, running down this edge, and from that brow. Cheek can have a slight highlight as well, and you often get a little highlight up here on the forehead. Tiny bit on the lip there, and finally get a couple of highlights in his eyes. And maybe just looking at it quickly, I want to give a little bit of a boost on this top of this ear, just so, yeah, that flicks it out nicely. You can see the difference that makes. Maybe a tiny bit down some of these other sections, but yeah, that pretty much does it for this session. You see it's quite quick. So using that foundation, we were able to really quickly kind of rework all our values. I should say our colour and chroma, so hue and chroma, shifting to something that we're a lot happier with, or I'm a lot happier with. And a really good foundation to work from next week. But yeah, that's it. As always, follow the YouTube channel to see these videos regularly, and if you want one-on-one tuition with me and all my colleagues at OCAD, you can click the link to visit the school and sign up. But yeah, that's it. So I'll see you guys next week when we carry on with this piece.